Hey everyone, welcome back. Hopefully yesterday's practice went pretty well. It was on completing the square. Today we're going to talk about quadratic formula. So up to this point you have a couple different ways that you can solve a quadratic. You have factoring from the previous units that we've worked on. You have solving using the square root, and then you also did completing the square yesterday and Monday. Today we're going to do the last one, which is quadratic formula. Quadratic formula always works. But I'll tell you, the one downside is it can be kind of long, right? So this is a way that you can solve a quadratic. You don't have to know any of the other ways. The only downside is, again, that this is kind of the longest way to do it. So that's why we show you the other methods, because they're a lot faster. But again, if all else fails, use a quadratic formula. It is provided for you on the EAR test as well. So there are a couple steps. I've listed them here for you. It says steps for using the quadratic formula. First of all, always make sure it's set equal to 0. I think that's the biggest mistakes that students have, is sometimes they will not be set equal to 0 and they'll get it wrong. Okay, so make sure, first of all, set the equation equal to 0. Then you want to put it in standard form. So that means you want to put, with the quadratic, remember the biggest exponent always 2, so you want that to be first. Then whatever number or coefficient goes with x to be second, and then your constant to be last. So it looks like that, ax squared plus bx plus c. Then you want to identify the a, b, and c's, right? A, b, and c, which in this case is the coefficients. So what are the a, b, and c? And lastly, you want to substitute into the formula and simplify. So when I mentioned that this is pretty easy but long, it 100% is as long as you know the formula. That's why I had you guys watch the video first of the Pop Goes the Weasel song. Okay, so if you have not seen that, jump back, take a look at the link that I posted in Canvas. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and write it down here. So again, just to quick sing it, don't make fun of my singing, but it's x is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So again, Pop Goes the Weasel song, x equals negative b plus or minus, the plus or minus accounts for both the positive and the negative, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what you're going to do is you're going to plug in for every single one of the variables, okay, except for the x. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Example 1. First of all, is it set equal to 0? Sure is. Just on the other side, that's okay. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, put the equation in standard form. Biggest exponent first. Yep, that's good as well. Perfect. Okay. Step 3, you want to label your ABC. So A is the coefficient out in front of x squared, which is 5. B is negative 10. And C is negative 15. Okay, so there's your coefficients. Okay, and then lastly, plug it into the formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and plug these in. So A is 5, A is 5, B is negative 10, C is negative 15. Okay, so negative B, so I'm going to write it just like it's the formula. Okay, but then B is, in this case, negative 10. And then you have plus or minus the square root. B was negative 10 squared minus 4 times A, which is 5 in this case, and C, which is negative 15. Okay, all over 2 times A, which is 5. Okay. From here, all you have to do is simplify. So just do your best. You can use a calculator, whatever you need to. So negative 10 becomes a positive 10. This becomes 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared is 100. Okay, 4 times 5 is 20. 20 times 15 is, off the top of my head, let's see, 20 times 10 is 200. 20 times 5 is another 100. So what is that, 300? Yep. Okay, so we have two negatives. Okay, negative and a positive. All those multiplied together give you a positive. All over 10, because 2 times 5 is 10. So this gives you 10 plus or minus the square root of 400 all over 10. which gives you 10 plus or minus the square root of 400. In this case, happens to be even, but sometimes you have to simplify the radical there over 10. And now we're going to split it up because now we're going to have two solutions. We have 10 plus 20 over 10 and 10 minus 20 over 10. Okay, always simplify the top first of a fraction. 10 plus 20 is 30. 30 divided by 10 is 3. So there's one solution. 10 minus 20 is negative 10. Negative 10 over 10 is negative 1. So as you can see, I got two solutions. Was it kind of long? Absolutely. Okay, so that's the one downside of using this. All right, so now let's do a couple more examples here. Make sure you know what you're doing. So I'm going to move all this out the way. Okay, again, make sure it's set equal to 0. It is. Perfect. Okay, list your a, b, and c's. In this case, a, what's the coefficient on front of x squared? It's 1. B is 14, and c is 49. Again, writing the formula, x equals negative b, which is 14, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, and again, we are just simplifying the numbers here. So this becomes negative 14 plus or minus the square root. 14 times 14 is 196. Let's see, 49 times 4. Well, 50 times 4 is 200. Minus 4 is 196 as well. Okay, and there's only one negative, so that one's negative. Okay, so this is negative 14 plus or minus the square root of 0. Because 196 divided by, or minus 196 is 0. So this, what is the square root of 0? Well, it's just plus or minus 0. So this case, if I'm adding 0 to 14 and then I'm subtracting 0, it doesn't change it. So my solution is negative 7. This is a case where you only have one solution. So pay attention very closely to the three examples here. First one, you had a positive number underneath the radical symbol, right? How many answers do we have? 2. Okay, we got a 0 underneath the radical symbol. How many answers did we get? Excuse me. We got 1. All right, let's see what happens with the last one. Okay, is it equal to 0? No, it is not. So we need to subtract the 1 over to both sides. Negative x squared plus 8x minus 1 equals 0. Okay, now list your a, b, and c. A is negative 1, b is 8, c is negative 1 as well. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And again, simplify your numbers. 8 squared is 64. Negative 4 times negative 1 gives you a positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 1 gives you a negative 4. What am I missing? Anything? Nope. Okay. And then this becomes negative 2. Perfect. Okay. Negative 8 plus or minus the square roots of 60 all over negative 2. Okay, so this is going to split up here, and we got to split down negative or 60. So radical 60 has 15 and 4, right? 30 and 2, and that would be it. 15 and 4. This breaks up into radical 4, radical 15. So it would be 2 radical 15. So this would be negative 8 plus 2 radical 15 over negative 2, and negative 8 minus 2 radical 15 over negative 2. And there's your two solutions. Okay, you could actually simplify these solutions as well, because the 8, the 2, and the 2 are all even. So really this would be basically be positive 4 plus or minus radical 15. Okay, that would also be an acceptable answer because it accounts for both the positive and negative version. Okay, all right, let's take a look. So what does that mean when it says discriminant? Well, first of all, can you take the square root of a negative number? So if it says square root of negative 6, no. right? Okay, so up here, notice all of our square root symbols got positive numbers or they came out to be 0. But what if, like, this number, okay, was negative? What if it said negative 60? Well, you would not be able to take the square root of a negative number, so that would be no real solutions. Right? If you get a negative radical, no real solutions. That's the only time you get it. So please, stop putting no real solution just because you're like, I don't know the answer, so I'm going to guess no real solutions. Please stop doing that. Okay, so what does the discriminant tell you? The discriminant, it's a definition, can tell you the number and type of solutions of a quadratic equation. So the discriminant can tell you whether there are 2 solutions, whether there's 1 solution, whether there's no real solutions, and it can tell you the type of solutions as well, whether they're real or imaginary. So the discriminant, by definition, is b squared minus 4ac, which if you think back to up here, b squared minus 4ac, it's important because that's the number that's underneath the radical symbol, right? So if I ever want to say how many solutions are there in a specific quadratic, all I have to do is just that small part of the quadratic formula, and it will tell me how many solutions there are. I don't have to do the whole thing, right? So if that number comes out to be equal to 0, like the second example we did above, that means that there is 1 root, okay? For example, the square root, let's see, it could be like, well, let's just do the example from up above. So we had, b was 14, 4 and 49, or 1 and 49. So like b squared, let's see, 14 squared minus 4, 1, and negative 49. Or I'm sorry, positive 49. Okay, that's the one we did above. We knew that this is 196 minus 4 times 49 is also 196. Comes out to be 0, which would be 1 solution, which means it touches the graph at 1 spot, right, on the x-axis. Okay, what about if it's greater than 0? So what if the number is positive? Well, we already talked about that. That's the example above. There are 2 solutions there. Okay, so if, let's say it's, I don't know, 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2, right? Like this is your A, and this is your C, and this is your B value, right? So that'd be 36 minus 8, which is 28. Okay, there would be 2 solutions, right? Because it's positive, and as you can see, it crosses the x-axis twice. Okay, so the last one is, what if it's negative? Okay, what if it's negative? Well, we already talked about this. This means there are no real solutions. Okay, and this would be a case if it's like, let's say it's 6 squared minus 4 times 4 times 3, right? So this would be 36, and this would be 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 3 is 48. So this will give you a negative 12. So that means there are no real solutions, okay? Which means, as you can see, it never touches the x-axis. All right, so that's what the discriminant is. The discriminant is literally just this part of the formula. So if it says how many solutions are there, that's what you'll use to find the discriminant. Otherwise, if it wants you to find the answers, like solve for x, find the roots, the solutions, you'll use the quadratic formula. Okay, so quick exit ticket tonight. Get it done, turn it in. If you have any questions, jump on Zoom, or you can Canvas message me, and I'll see you guys soon.